United Union International Director Simon Dubbins, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you very much, Erem.
Thank you. Let's start with the Turkey's occupation attacks to Kurdistan. Turkey has recently begun another military operation against the PKK in the northern Iraq. At the same time, Turkey continues making threats about invading further into the Kurdish majority areas of North and East Syria. What do you think is the aim of the Turkish government's domestic and foreign policies in the region?
Erem, I think it's very clear they've been wanting to invade. They have been at war with the Kurdish population for a long time and been wanting to invade and provoke and do everything they possibly can. I think they're committed to do it, and it's also a way of diverting attention from all of the problems that Erdogan has got in Turkey at the moment. It's just more vile aggression on the part of the Turkish state.
Thank you. What do you think people in Western countries can do to pressure the Turkish government and support the people of the region who are under attack right now?
Well, there's a huge amount that they can do, which sadly they're not doing. There's all sorts of pressure that can be brought to bear through NATO structures, through the European Union, through the wider international community. I do believe that patience is starting to wear very, very thin with Turkey, and I think people are increasingly understanding the threat that Turkey poses, not just to the region, but the wider world. But sadly, as we saw in the meeting with the EU recently, they seem still prepared to tolerate a lot of the disgusting actions of Erdogan instead of taking really clear action to stop it.
Another significant development in Turkey is the Kobani trial, as you follow up as well, of the 108 HDP members, including the HDP arrested former co-chairs Figen, Yüksekdag, and Selahattin Demirtas, held on 26th of April in Ankara. What do you consider to be the significance of the HDP in Turkey? Very short, very briefly.
Well, the HDP is obviously the voice of democracy, the voice of opposition. It's a sister party of the Labour Party and many other social democrat parties, and we should be doing absolutely everything to support them. The trial itself is a disgrace. I understood that the defence lawyers, some of them had to walk out because others had been barred from entering. How on earth can you have a normal, fair trial when the defendants are not even allowed to have their lawyers present? The whole thing is a farce. They called and supported a demonstration in order to support the people of Kobani against the collaboration and the vile attacks of ISIS. So frankly, the trial is a farce. It's a political trial. We need to do a hell of a lot more to support the HDP.
I think as a highly experienced trade unionist, it's important to ask you that question as well. How do you think international organizations and specifically the trade union movement can act to pressure their own governments and support the HDP?
Look, I think there's a lot we can do, Erem. The problem is, like the whole world, trade unions have, been really occupied with the COVID crisis and making sure that their members are looked after. There's lots of problems with job losses, protection against the virus, and all sorts of other things. So attention has become very inward. But if we don't forget that this will affect everybody, we remember how critical it is. There is an enormous amount that unions can do to pressure MPs, to pressure the European Union, to make their voice heard in the defence of democracy and human rights, as quite rightly we have done throughout our history. We need to step up to the plate and do more internationally now.
Dear Simon Dubbins, United Union International Director, thanks again for joining us and thank you for your valuable comments today.
Thank you very much as always, Erem.
Thank you. Former UK MEP and supporter of peace in Kurdistan campaign, Julie Ward, thanks for joining us today. Over the past months, Turkey's attacks against the HDP have continued to escalate. Only recently, on the 26th of April, the trial of the 108 HDP members, including the former co-chairs of the party, has just begun. What do you think these attacks and this trial in particular indicate about the state of democracy and the rule of law in Turkey?
I think they're very troublesome, very worrisome, because they're not in line with international democratic norms. They're not in line with international human rights norms. We already know that the European Court of Human Rights, in a ruling in December, called for the release of Demirtas, and yet Turkey is continuing to ignore all of these calls from the institutions to which it's a party to. So I just see a country that is heading further and further into a dictatorship, and I don't think this is healthy, and it's very concerning because Turkey is on the border with Europe.
In your view, why have the governments of Western countries, including the UK, have failed to take action against the invasion and human rights violations committed by the Turkish government?
Well, in part, I think the context that we're in at the moment with the COVID pandemic has created a useful cover and distraction, not just for Erdogan, but for other authoritarian leaders around the world. And it's deflected attention away from these areas which should have a lot of scrutiny. One of the reasons why the UK is not interested in criticising Turkey, quite frankly, is because of Brexit. So the UK now finds itself adrift. It's lost its access to the single market by choice, and suddenly wants to have trade with all kinds of regimes, which normally we would be demanding certain human rights norms. So I think that the UK particularly, doesn't want to upset a country that it's desperate to do trade with. So it's not going to make any kinds of complaints or demands or, regarding human rights, because what it wants is the trade. I think things are much more nuanced in the EU. So I was a member of the European Parliament, and I knew that we had a very strong, good, healthy body of MEPs who had bothered to learn about the Kurdish situation and would support it and would support imprisoned journalists. And many of us, made statements. We had press conferences. Sure, the EU is not in the best position, I agree, but I don't think it's in such a kind of blind situation as the UK. In fact, blind is probably the wrong word to use, because I think Boris Johnson and Liz Truss know exactly what they're doing. They simply don't care about human rights. So it's trade at any price. And I think that will be demonstrated as we go forwards. So they certainly don't want any people like us to be kicking up a fuss about Turkey jailing politicians who have been democratically elected, or about attacks, on neighboring countries, and they're simply not going to engage with that as an international foreign affairs issue.
Lately, Turkey has begun a new occupation attacks to some parts of northern Iraq. Also, the civilian villages has been bombed last few days. How would you like to comment about these invasion attacks? Very short, very briefly.
Well, it's very sad, isn't it? I think it's very sad to see that Kurdish majority governments, whether in municipalities, regions, or wherever, won't stand in solidarity with other Kurdish people. I think this, minorities really suffer when people don't stand together. And so really it's incumbent upon the whole of the Kurdish population in the region, but also the diaspora as well, to be more outspoken, to demonstrate more solidarity. And I think that has to be the way forward. And yes, it is disappointing, hugely disappointing, but also geopolitics again is at play here. We've got the US, we've got Europe, we've got the UK, we've got historic kind of legacy of problems with Iraq anyway. And a lot of people find it too complicated to even engage with. So they don't make comments, they don't write letters to the paper, they don't write to their MPs or their elected representatives because they find the whole situation really complex and they don't know what to say. So I do think that the Kurdish community needs to speak out, and that those of us who are allies with the Kurdish community, we need just to strengthen those bonds really and to express our disappointment.
Dear Julia Ward, former UK MEP and supporter of Peace in Kurdistan campaign, thanks for joining us. Thank you for your comments today.